So I restarted this over and over. But as I told you before, I'm going to start from the very beginning, because they don't want this out here. I'm exposed in the kingdom of darkness, and this woman named Reid. I don't know her. I don't know of her. It's someone who just basically I became made known of. I became enlightened about who she is. So, as I told you before, when I was 6 years old, I was an avid reader and writer. I started off reading all the time. I loved to read. I read everything from, my mother started me off when I was about 3 or 4 years old, would get me a Berenstain Bears book. I would read the Berenstain Bears. I collected every single one of those books. We read everything from Ramona and Beezus. I read all of the Ramona Quimby series, the Babysitter's Club, the Sweet Valley Twins. I would read all the time. I read Roald Dahl books by Christopher Pike, books by R.L. Stein. Then I graduated to Stephen King. I was reading books since I was a little girl, and then I started writing books. I was writing since I was about 6 years old. I would write my own books. I would just sit there, and it would just come to me. I didn't have to plot characters. I didn't have to brainstorm. I would just get a thought in my head, an idea. Next thing you know, I'm writing. I would write and can sit for hours and write. This would go on for days and weeks until I would complete the novel. And that's how I've been for years. I had a specific way of words. And whenever my mom got money, I would have her take me to Walden Books. We had a Walden Books around that time. My mother was very poor. We were very dilapidated. We were an impoverished family. Whenever she got her money, I would go out and buy a book. That was my treat. I mean, I love toys, but my preference were books. I would prefer books over toys. And instead of watching TV, even though I watch movies sometimes, I would just sit and read. And sometimes my cousins would be like, let's go outside and play. Why are you sitting there reading? And so I love to read. Long story short, my mother would take me. We would have scholastic book fairs at school, and I would buy books. She would give me 2 books, and I look forward to that. That was my treat. Looking forward to weekly readers. All I did was read. I loved reading. I loved writing, and that's what I used to do. And so I was the type of person I could sit down and write for days. I would just write. Like I said, I didn't have to plot. It could come right to me, a thought. Next thing you know, I'm just plotting the whole thing. I usually write in reverse. Like I had the entire ending planned out before I even started the book. Like I knew the twist. I knew everything. It just came to me right there. And then and there was a gift. And I had a way with words. I was very linguistic. I had a vast vocabulary, and I knew how to use the words to make it sound interesting and eloquent. I put words together, and I spoke and communicated well and effectively. And that's how I was always. There was just a gift that God had put inside of me. And as you know, it says the talents of a man makes a way for him and puts him before great men. And so for years, I didn't know people were targeting me and were jealous and envious of the gifts and talents that I had. I wanted to be a writer, but for some reason, everything was blocked. Every time I tried to pursue anything, there was always this hindrance or resistance where I could not do it. And I didn't know all along that people were using my gifts and talents and stealing from me. And I would start going to schools, colleges, corporations, getting jobs. And all along, people were holding on to me, using my talents and gifts, luring me to these places and holding me on, or just stealing things out of me and taking it. They were spiritually trafficking me and hijacking my things. If you know, as a person physically hijacks someone, they abduct them and start using them. They hold them in captivity and use them for their purpose and take whatever they want out of them. This is what these people were doing to me. They were spiritually trafficking me and holding me in captivity, holding me on spiritual altars. And started with family members, and then it went to evil neighbors and those around in their neighborhood who gained access to my stuff. And it became something known where secret societies, cult members, organizations were seeking me out to use my gifts and talents to traffic me so they can use my stuff and hold me on altars and take credit for all my stuff. They were stealing my abilities and skills. And so I did not know this. And like I told you, long story short, every time I tried to go to school, I had a college professor, one of my schools where I was attending, and he told me, oh, you have a way of writing. When I wrote an essay, he read it. He said he enjoyed reading it. He said, you have a way of writing to keep people interested. And back then they had us always having peers grade our papers or looking at our stuff. And the Lord was letting me know they were stealing from me then. There were always these people come up to me and ask me questions. They knew I was intelligent, and they would seek me out and take stuff. And next thing you know, I'm struggling. I started feeling like writing became a burden to me. I didn't want to do it anymore. And this was them trying to steal my gift and talent. Like I said before, it says when they try to keep you from using the talents that God gave you so they can have a way to steal it. Because it talks in the Bible about those who don't use their talents, God will take it away. But it says he will take it away. He didn't say for you to take it and steal it. And these people were seeking me out. I was trying to use my gifts and talents, but they were trying to take them and keep me from using and hold me on altars. And so long story short, I had this inclination to move to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. But before we go back into that, I started right before we moved, around maybe 2013. Right before we moved to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I was sitting in a stupor. I don't know what. It was like I was being spiritually attacked. I was going through all kinds of stuff. This entire coven was fighting up against me, fighting up against my children, and they've been doing this for years. And I was sitting there, I started writing these books, and there were homosexual fan fiction about a very popular group. And I just started writing this, and I was on this popular site at the time called Wattpad, and I used a pseudonym, but I was writing these fan fiction books about homosexual males, and they were having sex, and the books were very popular. Like the titles of it was My Boss's Wife, My Boss's Son, My Sister's Fiance, 4 Days of Christmas. These were very popular books. They actually enjoyed these books, and I was writing these books, and I got convicted. And so I didn't know where that desire came from, because I'd never written anything like that before. I didn't even read those type of books. And so I just had this desire all of a sudden to write these books about these two homosexual males back then. And so I kept writing the books because the Lord convicted me and said, you need to start writing those books. And he said, if you don't stop writing these books, you're not going to like what happens to you. I felt the Holy Spirit telling me that in my spirit. It's not like I heard a voice, but it was just like a knowing in your spirit. You just know. And so I kept writing books because I was being rebellious. And I thought to myself, well, what's going to happen? I'm just writing some books. And so when we ended up going to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The Lord let me know recently that they lured me down. There was an entire cult, a coven that sought me out because they wanted to take my anointing and steal my gifts and hold me on their altar and basically try to get me over to their kingdom so they can use me and use my gifts and talents and get me for their kingdom. And so I went down to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Y'all knew how that went. I was attacked down there relentlessly. Me and my children, we ended up having to leave. And they were retaliating against me because God used me to do his work down there to try and free his people. And they wanted to use me for their purpose. But they were binding their people to me spiritually, using rituals and spells. They were cutting to my legs, my feet at night. They were cutting to my body. They were sealing my DNA, doing all kinds of things while I was sleeping. I would wake up with scars all over me, my blood being extracted. They would take jewelry and clothing of mine out of my house, and it would end up missing. They were putting it on their altars and doing all kinds of things, making spiritual sacrifices, using my personal belongings when I was at my job, holding it on altars, stealing my stuff, stealing pencils and pens of mine so they can use it and gain access to me. And they were binding people to me. Back then, the Lord was letting me know they were binding all their people to me, using rituals and spells to do this. And so when I moved back to Ohio, this stuff continued, and we went through all kinds of crap. And so even to this day, I wake up and my fingernails look like they're perfectly clipped in an angle. They're clipped in an angle like they have been cut. And people were taking my fingernails, taking my hair, and binding themselves to me. And I started changing. My physical features were changing. My skin color was changing. My skin tone, my hair texture. As you know, we were the indigenous people. The Lord let me know we're descendants of the Native Americans. And just like they devoured the Native Americans and taken everything out of them, stole their land and basically pillaged them, beat them, abused them, took their children from them, even sexually assaulted them. All this stuff was happening to us, the same thing they did to our ancestors. And they were taking us, and this is why this stuff has happened. And they've been holding on to our stuff, using our gifts, using our talents. And so when I wrote that book at that time, I didn't know then that these people were bound to me then spiritually. They were binding themselves to us all along and holding on to us. They knew who we were and had sought us out. And they lured me to Pennsylvania. I thought God was sending me down there, but it was them. The Lord let me know now recently that it was them who lured me down there so they could take my stuff. And they fought up against us because they could not get their way, because God sustained me while I was down there and did not allow me to join forces with them and enter their kingdom and join ties with them. And so they still been bound to me all along. And so when I started writing these books recently, again, I started feeling like I had the inclination to write, because I had stopped writing because every time I wrote books, I was writing Christian books and the books had not sold. I wrote a weight loss book back in 2011. I self-published my first book in 2011, and I've been writing books ever since. Even though I've been writing since I was a little girl, about 6 years old, every time I wrote, I was like something would happen to my computers, or my computer would break, or I would lose all the information, or my mother would throw out my pages of stories. And this was the enemy's way of hijacking my stuff. Then people were putting out spells on me to take my gifts and talents, so they would have something just basically hinder me from being able to fulfill that purpose of writing that God had for me. They did not want me to use my talents. They would create something to happen so I could not use my talents. So people have gained access to my talents and my gifts, and they have stolen that and used it for themselves and became authors, self-published authors, or best-selling authors. They acquired contracts and royalties. See, I can't even communicate well. They stole all of my communication skills, but I'm getting to where I'm trying to talk about in a minute. So after I wrote those books, the Lord had punished me. I told you I couldn't eat for 4 months. Something that happened where he kept me from eating, but he sustained me. I was able to drink liquids. because I was disobedient. I wrote that book, but it was not my desire to write that book. The people who were binding themselves to me, that desire came from them. And so they wanted to use my gifts for their purpose. And they saw that I was writing books for God and I was serving God with my gifts. They wanted to hijack my gifts and give it to other people. And that's what they've been doing all along. Taking my gifts and talents out of me. Even though these gifts and talents are meant for God's kingdom, he gave this to me. They've been stealing my writing abilities, my communication skills, my beauty, my hair, my wisdom, my songwriting abilities, because I used to write lyrics and songs, my singing abilities, everything that God put inside me, my knowledge, my memory, everything. I had all of that, and they've been taking it out of me for years, using it for their own kingdom, for their own purpose, for their people. And so we're going back to this woman, Rachel Reid. Like I said, I don't know her. I know a bit about her now. I didn't know who she was at all. But a book idea came to me back in January. And I wrote this book called The Politician's Wife. And I sat there and I wrote that book it just took me like 2 weeks to complete the entire book. I just sat there every day for hours, just doing nothing but writing. I would wake up in the morning and write all the way till it was time to go to bed. So I sat there and wrote that book in 2 weeks, a 400-some page novel. And that's just typically how my writing abilities were. I can just get up and write a book, not boasting. That's just the talent. I get up, and some people say they take months. I could write a book in weeks or days. And so I could finish an entire book if I just sit there and commit my whole everything to it, and I would write these books. So I wrote these books, and then I started writing this book called Split Decision. And so I wrote the first part of Split Decision. As I'm writing the book, I'm noticing that the characters, it's like every time I write the book and I'm trying to write it a certain way, the narrative would change, them trying to become homosexual or liking another male, sexually attracted to a male in the story, even though that was never my intention when I wrote the book. My intention was not for it to go that way. And I noticed that I'm saying, why are the characters all of a sudden trying to turn towards homosexuality? And so as I'm writing this book, and I keep writing, but I was writing another book. And as I write the book, sometimes I would sit down and nothing would come to me. It's like my thoughts are gone. And I would have to wrestle. And it's like whoever's holding on to my talent, all of a sudden, after I'm fighting for it and praying and warring, it will be released. Like my ability, my book that was held on the altar, my writing skills, the Lord let me know they were gatekeeping my writing abilities and my talents, taking all my talents and holding on the altar because Satan was angry that I was using it for God's purpose. He did not want me to use his stuff for God's purpose, even though they offered me up to Satan. I belong to God, and he did not want me to use my own writing abilities that God created me with. That does not belong to the kingdom of darkness. It belongs to God because he put it inside of me as his stuff, and he gave it to me to use. And they were fighting me for it and wanting it for their people. And so this was what's going on all along. And these people who were using witchcraft, sorcery, whatever else, they're part of different cults. They were seeking out my gifts to take it for themselves so they can profit off of it and monetize it and make money off of it. It's just like, for instance, let's say you want to get your grass cut. And there's a man in the neighborhood who's very good and savvy at cutting grass. He has a specific technique, and he's very skilled at cutting the lawn. And he can design it and manicure the lawn very well. But you don't want to hire him because you want to hire your friend down the street who's not as talented in cutting grass. He doesn't have as many skills. He's not natural at it. He can cut it, but he can get the job done. But it doesn't look to the extent that they won't have the same effect. He's not very good at it. So you don't want to hire this person who's good at it because he's not your friend. You don't like him. You don't know him. You don't want to hire him. And so you want the same effect that this man can do, but he has that ability, but you don't want to hire him because you're not acquainted with him, or you don't know him. You don't like him for whatever reason. He's not a part of your group. You want to hire your buddy, your best friend. You want him to do it, but he can't get the job done like the other person because he's not skilled at cutting grass. So let's say you hold him on the altar and do some type of sorcery or some type of spell and take his talents from him. Or let's say even in the physical realm, we're not going to even use the spiritual realm. Let's say you stole his tractor or whatever he uses. He uses certain equipment that's very costly that you can't access, or you don't have that same equipment. So you steal his equipment out his yard and you give it to your friend who you want to hire for the job. And so now they're cutting grass with something that's not theirs, something that was stolen, and they get the job done, and you pay that person even though they used something that you stole from the other human being who you did not want, the other man who you did not want to pay. So that's what they've been doing in the spiritual realm. They didn't want me working on their jobs. They didn't want me writing books. They didn't want me to do anything, even though I had talents to do this, natural talents that were inside of me because we were created like that. I mean, there's some people who Yeah, I understand you can go to school and get your talents developed and gifts, but if you're gifted at something and God gave you a natural gift, a lot of times you can do that gift without even having to go to school and getting a degree to obtain that. Some people are just naturally gifted and stuff comes to them. Like me, I've been writing for years since I was 6 years old, and the gift just came to me, and people were stealing that gift and targeting me and taking things out of me all along and using it for their own gain, using it for themselves. And so there are people who have been able to do things and accomplish things without obtaining a degree and without paying tons of money. And certain people have things inside of them. God created certain groups of people who have things. I talked about this before. So these people have been seeking me out. They don't want me on their jobs because they want their jobs for only their group of people. They don't want to be around me, but they wanted my gifts and talents. And so they would take my stuff out of me using sorcery. They would still somehow hijack my talents and my gifts and use it for themselves, using my communication skills, my knowledge, my memory. I always talked about my memory because I had a stellar memory. Like I said, when I walked into a job at 19 years old, a grocery store, and they had tons of fruits and vegetables with 4-digit codes. Some of them had 4-digit codes, all these vegetables and fruits. I went in there that very first day. Within 2 days, I learned almost all of them. And there were people who had been there for years, still had to look at the list and type it in each time they were ringing up these fruits and vegetables. And when the man got in line one day, one of the customers, he was astounded by how I could just ring up all these groceries, and it didn't take me no time. He says, finally, somebody who knows what they're doing, because that just, I first of all, took the initiative to learn all of it, and I could memorize it. I was the same girl in 6th grade when we were trying to memorize a poem. When they told us we were going to memorize a poem for a competition and everybody was choosing 1 and 2 paragraph poems, I went and took the one that had 14 stanzas, a long poem, the very long poem. I didn't take the easy way out. I took a poem that was challenging, and I sat there and committed to memorizing that poem. And within about 20 or 30 minutes, by the next day, that same day, I could say that entire poem effortlessly and memorize all of it. And so they knew the talents that I had, and they were seeking me out for years. They didn't like me. I wasn't a part of their kingdom. And so they didn't want me on their jobs. They didn't want me to have a business. They didn't want me to have any type of success, but they wanted to use my stuff for their own selves. And this is what they've been doing. They've been seeking my stuff out for years, seeking me, hold me on their altars, taking things out of me, taking things out of my children, just like my son to this day. He couldn't graduate from their high schools. They didn't want him in their schools, but they took all of his knowledge out of him. He was a very intelligent boy, but they stole everything and held it for themselves, gave it to all their people, dispersed of it. And so we're going to go back to this woman named Rachel Reid, because I didn't know anything of her. The Lord had already told me that there were people who had best-selling novels, who have written books off of my talents and gifts, and they've been doing it for years. And so I started writing this book where it's called Chasing the Wave. I wrote this book about this homosexual boy. He was having a homosexual relationship, and I didn't think anything of it. I'm wondering why am I getting these desires to write these type of books? And I knew it was wrong, but I just wrote the book anyway, because I thought at first, I'm not going to publish this book. I'm just going to write it for myself. And so I let the book sit there for a while. I'm saying, I'm not going to publish this book. And so as I'm getting on Amazon and Kindle and all these library apps where you basically get books, obtain books, I kept seeing these books called Heated Rivalry popping up on my feed, popping up. A book called Heated Rivalry and Game Changers. And I looked at it first. I'm like, I don't read that kind of stuff. And so I said, well, let me just, I'm going to go ahead and check this book out, see what it is, because it keep popping up. And I wanted to know, basically, kind of compare. I want to do like an analysis and see how this person writes compared to how I write. Because I wanted to just get, because I wasn't reading anybody's books. I had stopped reading books for a while because when I get into writing mode, I don't want to read anybody else's books because I don't want my books to be affected by anybody else's writing, if that makes any sense. I go through a period where I just read, and when I'm reading, I don't write. I just read. And then I go through a period when I write, I just write, and I don't try to read anybody else's books because I want to just focus on my own brain, and I want to write books off my own talents, my own ideas. I don't want anyone else's ideas to influence my books and the outcome of my characters and the situations that happen in my books, so that makes sense. So I wasn't reading anything at all. So I decided to pick up her book, and I knew I shouldn't have read it. I said, well, maybe I'm just going to get this book. I went to the library app, and I picked up the book Game Changers. At first, when I started reading the book, I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, what's the big deal? Because I didn't think anything of the book. It was like kind of boring in the first half. Then the second half, it kind of picked up like it was two people writing. All of a sudden, the second half was completely different. And it picked up and it got very interesting. I was like, okay, this is okay. It's a pretty okay book. And so when I read the book Heated Rivalry, I went back and said it was a lot better than the first one. And so I started reading her books. And then I went back to my book that I had written. I noticed the similarities. I'm like, a lot of similarities in this book. And I'm thinking like, how are these similarities And these people, the Lord was letting me know, these people were bound to me all along, using my talents and gifts. They were sitting inside of me, taking my stuff. They were binding these people to me. And so the reason why I made this video today, because this woman, Rachel Reid, has a series on HBO and another place, and she's from Canada. And I wonder, how are people from Canada getting access to me? So they're dispersing of my gifts, dispersing of my stuff all over this world to other people, having them use my talents, my abilities, and making money and making success for themselves off of it. And I can't even use my own things. I've written books that won't even sell. People won't even pick them up and buy it. I know they're good books. It's not the fact of that. It's the fact that everybody can make a way of themselves using my talents, my gifts, my knowledge, obtain degrees and everything. And they have fought us relentlessly in this country and kept us from having anything, just like they did to my ancestors. And I'm tired of it now. And so this woman has a series. And I looked at the series. I wasn't going to watch. Kept popping up on HBO. They kept wanting to show me this series. I'm like, why? Why you want to show me this stuff? So I finally looked at it. It fit the same model of the book. It was just nothing but homosexual men. And the book, the series is okay. I mean, it was okay. It was a pretty good series. So one of the actors in the series, I'm not going to even say their name, kept coming to me spiritually, sending telepathic thoughts and messages like bewitching me, trying to bewitch me, trying to get me to the same stuff I talked about before. When you start having thoughts, I don't know if it was, I believe it was them, because I started having romantic thoughts about this person. There was no sexual connection at all. It's the same thing. I already know what it is before, because they've done this before with 2 other men. And so a lot of times what they do is they'll try to get their people, if they want to use your stuff or try to take something from you, they want to try to set something up, some type of romantic encounter, or just bewitch you because they want to steal your stuff, or they feel like they're in trouble, they're guilty. And so that's when it came to me. This entire cast has gained access to me. Those who've been writing the screenwrites and the plays and producing the show they basically gained access because this one was already bound to me all along. This woman who gained a best-selling novel, who have been bound to me. All these people have been bound to me, gaining their success, using my talents and gifts, using my writing abilities and my skills, using my creativity, using my vocabulary, all this stuff. Been bound to me all along. You got all these people bound to me. This man kept coming to me and said, why are you here? What do you want? I mean, we weren't even talking. It's like a telepathic conversation that we were able to have. We didn't have to say a word. It's like something mentally being able to be done. And this person sought me out. And so I'm like, they were telling me things. I can't disclose too much because for whatever reason, I'm trying not to expose this person's name, only for their benefit, because they might be a new convert. I told God, it says, if this person wants to come to you, then I ask you to help him get saved that way. But he has to relinquish everything, because you're sitting here living off my stuff. It is theft. These people are stealing from me. If you know you stole, you know you use a talent that did not belong to you. You're taking things that are not yours, whether you accepted or received it or not, it's still stolen goods. You use something that belonged to another person. I can't walk in nobody's house and take something from them. I can't go in nobody's bank and take nothing out of your bank account, walk into your stores that you own, walk to your business and take whatever I want, help myself to your things, and then make money off of it, sell it and get money, and you have nothing. You used a service of mine without my permission or my consent. And that was God's gifts, because he gave it to me for his purpose. And you've been using my gifts and talents all along, seeking me out, taking things from me. Not only that, putting me in captivity. When I walk into a museum, they're watching me like a hawk. Got their guards and police officers watching me like I'm going to steal something. But you're taking everything out of us. Everything that you received was stolen from my ancestors, the indigenous people. And we were never supposed to be living in this type of environment where we're sitting here working and laboring for you, making a profit for you. We're indigenous people supposed to live off the resource and the elements of the earth that God put here for us for free. We're supposed to be living and off of our natural herbs and things that you're trying to go back to, but you forced us into a bondage and to a system, a capitalist system, where we have to make money and work and slave for you to make money and profit off of us. And that's not how he created us. He put resources in the earth for every man to be able to use. And he had the indigenous people here in their own land. So they were supposed to use their talents and gifts for God's purpose and the way he saw fit. But man made another agenda for themselves. And so they have basically turned people into slaves, enslaving them, putting them in a bondage. And if you can't work and produce, what do? They take your gifts and talents out of you and sell you off and traffic you off to people. And I was wondering, how did people from Canada and all over this world and other countries get access to my gifts and talents? Because they were selling it off. The leaders of the country were selling my things off, putting me on altars and giving my stuff, giving access to my things to other people in other countries. Using me basically as a slave that they trafficked and gave these people access to my stuff. But I go to God because he is the judge. And so like I said, I wasn't going to say anything, but this man kept bewitching me. Kept trying to make me have desires for him sexually. And I knew it wasn't him doing it. They were sending him to do this. They were using this young man to do this, to try and manipulate me, bewitch me, because they knew they were in trouble, because they all were using my talents and gifts to produce their show, to produce their series. And they've been doing it for years. It's not just them, it's everybody. Many people have written books off of me, made TV shows, made movies, made plays, built up companies and businesses off of everything that was inside of us. We're part of the indigenous people. Not only that, our ancestors are Egyptian. Like the Lord showed me that before. Everything came off of the Egyptian empire. And so they were taking stuff out of us for years, stealing things out of me, because I was part of my culture I'm part of the Egyptian cultures and heritage. And so I'm sitting here in this country, don't want me to have a thing, don't want us to have any type of success, have lived off of our things, bound all their people to us, and use us basically as your slaves, put us in captivity, assaulted us, oppressed us, and then think you're supposed to get away with it. And you didn't think God was going to ever say anything about it. And so you got this woman sitting here, have written books, and not only that, you're corrupting me. Because like I said before, I wasn't writing any homosexual books. That stuff, those desires, all that stuff being corrupted, you're binding yourself to me and putting your sins, your perversions, or whatever it is that you have onto me. And that's not supposed to be happening. We're supposed to be separated. If you're not a believer of Jesus Christ and you're in your own darkness, and you're of the world and you're going according to your flesh, you have no right binding yourself to something that is pure and holy and righteous of God. And they have defiled and tainted me. This is what I was telling God years ago. Why are you letting these people bind themselves to me, assault me in the middle of the night, do all these things and corrupt me? And he didn't say anything about it. All he ever says was, vengeance is mine, I shall repay. But I was upset because it's like, I'm sitting here walking around bearing this shame while everybody's putting their garbage on me. They're out here looking good, building themselves up. They have their resource. They have their jobs. They have their land. They have everything. They have destroyed me. They put all this fat all over my body. I look at that because I have written a fitness book. I was never fat to begin with. My mother raised me. We were eating fruits and vegetables. We were never eating junk food. They put their burdens on us for years. People who were too lazy and apathetic, or they come from a tribe that for some reason, all you had to do was go to God. You didn't have to come to me and destroy me. Don't you know he's going to deal with you for that? You're going to have to stand before a judge because you destroyed something. I can't walk into a museum and destroy your precious relics and artifacts, even though some of that stuff was stolen. I can't go into a place and deface their property and their statues, but you sit here and think you can destroy a human being that God created. You have little regard for the life that he has created and think you could get away with that? Binding all these people to me, using my beauty, taking my body, my physique, got everybody running around with our stuff thinking you could pay for it, something that wasn't ever for sale. Then you get your wealth and your success off of, you get your jobs, opportunities and doors open up for you. You have spouse and everything off of our stuff. And it says the talent of a man should make a way for him. And we're sitting here with nothing. That is why I'm discouraged, because I'm tired of it. I sit here with nothing. I don't have a thing. We're sitting here sleeping on the floor. We're living in one room. I'm sitting in a room, having to sleep in the same room with my 9-year-old son. You think that's good? We don't even have a home. They kicked us out of the house. They gave us Section 8 for a few months and then stopped paying it and had us kicked out of their homes. They flooded the place with roaches and rats on purpose just to push us out. Everywhere we've gone, then tell my kids we're not allowed in the library. We're not accepted and welcome in their community and their playgrounds. Everything you built up in this country, everything, that this land belongs to my ancestors. You're taking everything out of the Egyptian people, taking everything out of my people because it was already in us. Things we knew how to do without even going to a school. Stuff that was already inside us, how to make perfume, how to create certain recipes, how to plant. All that stuff was inside of our people naturally, and you sold it out of us, and then you make money and make a profit off of it. And then you go and teach it back to us for money. You think God likes that? And been taking everything. They have been devouring me and milking me of everything. Every day I wake up, someone's taking something out of me. I feel my spine aching and them just sucking stuff out of me, just sucking everything out of me. And I said, Lord, why? This is not fair. It's unjust. But they want to survive and sustain, but you put us in a corner somewhere. You put us somewhere in a corner, but you got all of your people bound to us, bound to me, using my gifts and talents, taking things from my children, stealing all of our DNA, our wisdom, our knowledge, everything God has put inside of us, inside of his indigenous people. And you, instead of using what you have the way God created you and going to him for what it is that you need, you're taking it out of us. And then you have the audacity to keep us from having anything and get mad if I speak anything about it, want to fight up against us. And you think that you're going to be entering God's kingdom. You don't think that he's going to get justice. When you want justice, if somebody walked into your land, onto your property and your house and took what you worked for and kept devouring you and stealing everything and kept you here with your children, you got to take care of. They stole all of the stuff that you went to school for or that you paid for and worked for and left you with nothing but crumbs. And they're running around living a life off of what you have, what you worked for after they stole it from you. And that's what he's talking about. And I wasn't going to even make this video, but I felt like it has to be uncovered because too many people have been getting away with living off my stuff. Then you say, oh, you ain't going to support me and buy my books. But you stole everything from me. A lot of your authors who you are buying books have used my talents, but they will never say anything because they're too prideful to say the truth. Witches and sorcerers and everybody else hiring other witches to take my stuff from me. They might not have taken it themselves, but they hired other people or they accepted and received of it. And they're just as guilty. But you receive the stolen goods. And I go back to God every day because he says he's just and holy. He says he loved judgment. He hated robbery for a burnt offering. And people have spiritually trafficked me and held me on their altars and kept me in this country for years, not allowing me to have anything that couldn't accomplish anything, even though it was naturally inside of us. Every group, every ethnicity looking at us with envy and jealousy have emulated us and kept us at the bottom. Then you mock us and shame us, but you're taking everything from us. But he says, vengeance is mine. I shall repay.